Game 1 of this TvZ Best of 3. In the top right, it is Cure. In the bottom left, it is Dark. This is from the Korean StarCraft League, the KSL. You can support their Patreon. It's patreon.com/Korean StarCraft League. I do host every other week, I believe now, tournaments that are for the Korean players, as the Korean players arguably still the worst hit out of all of the regions. Yeah, I'd still say that. StarCraft is in a period of flux, shall we say. I do think we're going to get some good news soon. I won't say any more than that. I might have heard something, I might not have. You didn't hear it from me if you did or did not hear it from me. Anyway, but no matter how you slice it, the Korean scene went from total domination to, frankly, lacking in new players, and then eventually losing out on their major tournaments, which, again, isn't technically canceled as far as an announcement, so who actually knows? But the only thing we have to go on for the Korean scene is that apparently the Africa TV CEO, or big guy who is important, who goes to the events to say stuff, did mention StarCraft 2 in his speech, but is so far only doing a StarCraft 1 tournament. That's all the information I have for you. Anyway, so back to the players. Cure, obviously joining Team Liquid. Was it last year? It was either last year or late the year before that. Anyway, I thought it was a great pickup. I loved it. Team Liquid actually has a bit of a history when it came to hiring some of the best Korean Terrans. Most famously, they did get TvZ. But they've always had like an affinity for Terrans, it feels like. I was reminded recently of their very, very short-lived pickup of C. Liquid C was a thing for a little bit. He's a Brood War player who, of course, when everyone changed over to StarCraft 2, played StarCraft 2, but went back to Brood War. One of the first to go back to Brood War, actually, I want to say. He was one of the first to, I think, also get like a big crowd on Africa and kind of realize like there is a market for Brood War people on streaming. And so we had more and more Brood War players go back to Brood War. But C was one of the first. He did also get into some trouble, let's say. There's some controversy. You can look it up on C if you would like to. But right. So Cure, I love him. I love the pickup. I think he was a godly TvZ 2 years ago. But besides that point of time when he was at Gamers 8 trying to take on Raynor, who was also playing arguably the best Zerg I've ever seen, it was an amazing... like, both these players were just at the top of their game, it felt like. Raynor was at the top of his game. Cure's at the top of his game. At the end of the day, Raynor did prove successful, 4-2, I believe, at the finals. But that was Cure's best TvZ in ever, I think, actually. Because otherwise, Cure's TvZ, not typically that impressive. I'm gonna say it. Yeah. Cure, much more well-known for his godly TvT, TvT that could at least contest Maru's when Maru was a god at that matchup. Then maybe better at some point if you're, if you really want to dive into the stats, I guess. But TVP was also his jam for a while. He was godly in that matchup, just making lemons out of lemonade all the time. Wait, no. Lemonade out of lemons, there we go. All the time in that matchup. But TvZ, it just felt so uninspired. His TVT felt almost perfect, except Maru was even more perfecter. And then his TVP was a little sloppy at times, but he would always and eventually choose the right thing to do, and he would win. His TvZ, it kind of felt at times that Cure was just lost. And we'll see if that's still the case here versus Dark. Dark is minutes away, it feels like, from going to the military. He did not play in the most recent KSL, I believe, although it still is not reported he's gone to the military. It's this, like, they're about to knock on your door and take you kind of thing, which isn't actually what happens, but it just feels that way. So enjoy Dark games while you can. But we know Dark. I know that Dark can be a very aggressive Zerg player. Real just, like, punch you in the face. Don't try anything clever. He can cheese. He can play more roaches than a lot of his Zerg counterparts, although he's kind of backed away on roaches, it feels like, in the last year. And so he is a different type of Zerg player to face. I'm not ready to say that that's really something that benefits Cure, though. So I'm looking for Cure's TvZ ability right now. Dark, I feel like, is still... Oh, he's very much doing what Dark is. Okay, all right. Dark is still dark. There you go. Nidus Worm is on the way, guys. It doesn't seem like a TvZ build, but it is. Nidus Worm off of 3 base, Ling Queen. That's all that's going into that. But Cure has gone for a 3cc build. He went 3cc 111. He got the 6 Hellions, so very, very typical. He is particularly on point about Nidus Worms, though, it looks like. Is it just me? The Marines rallied to this location. Has to be for a Nidus Worm. And I'm pretty sure I chose the right replay. And that this is game 1. He might just be like, it's dark. Of course it's dark. Of course he's going to try. But, you know, the Nidus Worm has been done for a while, and there's been no attempt at making it happen. Oh, the off timing. Yeah, Cure is totally on top of this, man. Dark, though, is actually setting up that Nidus Worm as a bit of a bait, bit of a distraction. 3rd CC is now going to have to lose all his FTVs, but it looks like Cure, as soon as that Nidus Worm popped up, he was like, oh, I know what you're going to do. Supply depots went up, Hellions regarding that. Banshee comes back, deal with the Nidus Worm. This seems like a total failure on the part of Dark, who is only continuing on because he is trying to make up a facade, if you will, of aggression when he's actually getting drones. One Queen pops out. She should not get that creep tumor. Yeah, no way, no way. This is terrible for Dark. There's really no way to put it. It's atrocious. It's atrocious. Cure was totally on guard about it. Dark waited for the Marines to move, but to be honest, I'm not even sure it would have been successful, even if the Nidus Worm did get up. I mean, the Queens would have popped out, meaning that the Hellions weren't as much of a godsend as they would have been against Pureling, but still, I don't know, because he had to wait a little bit longer, and Cure's build is very streamlined, and all of his Sim City would have been away from that. I had my doubts in the first place, but no doubt about it now. That was a bad opener from Dark, who is going to try and make one hell of a comeback. Now, he is good at making comebacks, but I would say that the best comeback opportunity is with Ravagers and Infestors, which is not what he's doing. So with Ling Baneling, Hive? Is he just going to rate in Ultras? I'm not sure. I'm not sure what his plan is to make a comeback happen. The Baneling Nest is coming down. We got 3 hatcheries coming down at once. God love you, Dark. Ling's trying for run-bys. Always the best thing you can try to do to buy time, but the Banshees, even though they don't kill Lings particularly quickly, are still going to be a thorn in Dark's side there. They're not going to let those Lings run free on the 3rd. And he microed, so the CVs were never in trouble. All the while, Cure was actually taking a really fast approach to this attack. He didn't just move out with his Hellbats and tank ready. He moved out with Marines first, and then like carried everything else with his Medivacs later. It's about as fast as he could get to this side of the map. With the tank in a really abusive position. Hellbats will protect them against the Lings, of which there are only Lings right now. Banelings are being created, but then the Hellbats will do a good job tanking those Banelings. And, I think Dark could handle this first push, sure. I don't think he can handle every other push beyond it. And he can't handle it fast enough to save that hatchery. No run-by. No surround. He is going to try and get to Ultras. Wow. You know, I could see their Hail Mary potential. They're not quite what we think of. We think of burrowed banelings. We think of Fester Fungals. We think of maybe Lurkers as a comeback tool. Ultras, not so much. But I will say, if you can get to really fast Ultras before the Terran player is ready with the additional 3 tech labs on their barracks for the Marauders, the Ultras are very good against Marines. It's kind of their thing. And they can even be good against Marauders if they get a surround. So it's just one of the most expensive plays you can make. And 1 or 2 Ultras, especially without chitinous plating, which is another upgrade you have to wait for, they're not good. So we'll see if we even get there. The attempt to bust this looks like it won't be good enough. It is not good enough. Might have looked promising for the very first second of that battle, but there was so much Terran hidden in the nooks and crannies of the minerals, protected by the tank that's still alive. The Medivacs could have always picked up more Marines if they needed to. And it was not the bust that Dark was looking for. And I don't think he's going to get to those Ultras. Okay, a couple of Baneling connections finally happening, but as reinforcements come in, Banshee's also making an aggressive push. Now they don't have to worry about the run-bys, making the Spore Crawler micro. And Dark says, you know what? Fine, you got me. Fine, fine, fine. I guess I'll leave. God. Of course, he did die when the Nidus Worm didn't work. And now into game 2 on El Dorado in the top... Nope, bottom. In the bottom right, it is Team Liquid's Cure, and in the bottom left, it is Dark. You always gotta have that moment of hesitation when you're like, do I want the left side player to be on the top of the bar or the right side player? Anyways, El Dorado gonna change up the map a lot. Sure, but the map was not the problem last game. Dark wanted to start out the best of 3 with a good old punch to the face with a Ling Queen Nidus Worm. And Kier was all over it, man. It was like Dark had just done it to him. I mean, they must have played recently. Because even though you're like, well, it's Dark, and Dark does that build, and he does a bunch of cheesy shit. So of course Kier's going to be on guard. That's not how these pro gaming cheeses kind of work, in my opinion. Like, you could say that pro gamers have faced everything ever because they play so many games. They have faced all the cheeses, and they play against each other all the time, too. Like, our pool of pro gamers is unfortunately limited at this point, so they play against each other all the time. But the cheeses still work. The cheeses still work. The Nidus Ling all-in has killed plenty of Terrans, Kier included. I don't know where this is coming from, but it can. And all you have to do at that point when it does work, and when you're like, oh, Kier didn't look for the Nidus Worm, that's unfortunate. He had no idea it was on the way. That's unfortunate. All you got to do is be like, well, he didn't face it recently. That is, it's a legitimate excuse. But as soon as you face one DT player on the ladder, your next 20 games, you're afraid of DTs. And then after those 20 games are done, you didn't get DT'd again, you're like, I guess I'm fine. Like, your brain just forgets it. And then you get DT'd in the 21st game. That's always how it happens, right? So, just throwing it out there, I don't think Dark is going to be discouraged from cheesing or all-inning, because he's got so many up his sleeve. But, you know, that Nidus Worm, it's not going to happen. Clearly, Kier is going to use the tools at his disposal to make sure he never dies to that. Now, what can happen is that Kier has revealed that he's particularly on guard for cheeses and all-ins. And Dark could try and use that to his advantage by being a little greedier. Because, for instance, when Kier was unsure what truly was happening, because I don't think he really ever got, like, a direct scout on it. He never saw the Nidus Worm. I don't think he saw a lack of fourth, but I could be wrong about that. It looked like he had been defending from minute 4. As in, his Hellions were at home, his Banshees were at home, and his Marines were rallied in base. And that just is no contest then on whatever the Zerg is doing, right? So, you know, it's not good to lose the first game and have that on your record now. But there might be something gained from it, too. If Kira continues playing that way, Dark could get away with more creep spread. Or maybe, for instance, like a Roach all-in might be a good idea against someone who's playing particularly defensive, because their lack of aggression is also lack of scouting. And we know that Dark has pretty good 1-1 Roach all-ins. And that's the only thing I would say is aggression-based that I would feel like would work, because any other type of cheese is not going to work. Cure is doing the safest thing possible. 3cc 111 with the Reaper, scouting for, particularly early aggression. Obviously, you still got to cover your bases when it comes to any type of 2-base or pool first, something like that. But then 3cc, not only built in base, in natural, but still, it's also going to go into the safest location on El Dorado until the minerals are mined out. You cannot actually enter back here without air units. Dark is going to go for a 4-minute lair again. Well, not again. I think the lair was earlier last game. But he's going to go for a fast lair again. He's going to go Mutas. Now, I don't think of Dark as a Muta player. No. Well, no. No. Hey, I don't think of Dark as a Muta player. But, you know, they did have that little stint where it seemed like Mutas were coming back. On El Dorado, being the type of map that it is, Mutas can be really obnoxious. But yeah, just the combination of they're not meta. Dark isn't really a Muta player in my mind. Like, I'm not feeling it, but, I mean, it could be. Baneley Nest is down. That's going to be the protection that you need if you just go straight up to Spire. You can't, you know, try and go fast Spire as well as a couple double upgrades and no Baneley Nest. It is a Spire. I was like, everything in my belief of Dark says no, but the build was pointing yes, and I was caught in the middle waffling. But it is Mutas. Well, that is fun. All right, that is fun. So it officially is Mutas. That is really fun. That's going to be something that Cure might not scout for a long time. Going back to what I was discussing earlier, he is playing very defensive. Like, he's not trying to bust in with the Hellions and get some type of scout slash drone kills. So he's not going to scout the Spire. He's not going to scout, you know, lack of evolution chambers. The gases, he's probably also not going to scout, right? Almost for sure. You know, you don't often get your Banshees into every base's gas scout. The Banshees are awfully close to it. Not going to test the waters, knowing that Queens are probably ready to get on them as soon as they go into Spore Crawler range. So Dark is going to get away with the Spire here. Kira did take the bottom side base, but it was for the gold, as you can do, as you can see here. And then once that's mined out, you can take this base, and while you have made another opening for the Zerg player to attack you, it's still very well defended. Very well defended. Gonna mine out the minerals on the top side, actually, and use that to be aggressive. You could try to mine out your opponent's minerals so you can get some really abusive push, but they should never let you do that. I mean, I feel like it is possible, but they should really not let you do that. And Kira is probably thinking, there's no way he's gonna let me do that. It's gonna stop the creep spread from coming down this far, which is always a good maneuver. Mutas are on the way, again, totally undetected. Kira has no idea about this. No missile turrets. And he's still building tanks. I mean, no missile turrets is the #1 problem right now, but if he's going to continue producing tanks, it's not necessarily what you... I mean, it's not bad. I mean, you know, historically, Marine tank is totally fine against Mutas, but Widowmons did get introduced, and they are pretty good, and usually you would go them as well. At least as well, right? But the second factory isn't down yet. 4th CC actually going to come down on location. Mutas are finally going to make their appearance, and Cure is gonna go, oh, shit, right, that's an option. And so while he was totally anticipating the Nidusworm cheese, he had no idea about the Mutas, and you know, I was thinking the 1/1 Roach, because that would be, if Cure didn't know about the 1/1 Roach until the moment it attacked, like that could actually kill the Terran, right? Mutas, even if they're undetected, they're not necessarily gonna kill the Terran, so there's the good news, but it is a complete surprise. Curious didn't think that he'd have to worry about that. The attack on the front also did not work out. I believe he only sent one medevac out, though. Yeah, so it's not like he lost a bunch for the attack on the front. It is absolutely more the 14 SCVs and the surprise of the Mutas, because this just kind of changes your approach. The loss of the SCVs is not the biggest of deals, particularly because the 4th CC is already down. You've already invested the 400 minerals there. But even without it, you know, 14 SCVs is something a Terran could recover from, let's be real. But it does really change up your perception of how you're going to tackle this game. And if your instinct is to go, okay, they got Mutas, they're kind of weak in a direct battle, let me go and attack this guy. Well, that one thing that the Zerg player does besides build Mutas is get creep spread, failing speed. And 1/1 is done, so it's not like he fell behind in the upgrades. But Cure is not going to take the approach that he actually carved out for himself. He did mine this out. It looks like the Zerg was mining out the gold on the backside. Again, would not mind the attempt to push through here. And is instead trying to deal with the Mutas. Well, at this point, you know, Kira actually might have thought about pushing out, thinking there might be a time when the Zerg player is not maxed, and I can try and take some advantageous position. When you are forced to defend, waffle, you kind of have to admit the Zerg player is probably maxed out. And it's not that you can't push into a maxed out Zerg player if you're also maxed out, of course, but it might be better to wait for the Zerg player to come to you. And then once the Zerg player actually decides, okay, they're not coming after me, I can't push into them because they're playing really defensive, I'm going to go into Hive, That's when the push from the Terran becomes a little bit scarier. So that might be what Cure is waiting for. Unfortunately, all that waiting for, you know, the attack to come, for the mutas to fly by, is still killing SCVs. He's still losing 21 SCVs. The good news is he does have 4 orbitals, didn't find the need for a planetary, so he can get the mining back up and running with mules. Right, there's the push on the south side. This is going to be very tricky for Dark to take care of. We're funneling through this one choke. Is he really going to try and force the issue? Whoa! It kills more Marines than it probably should have, and the tanks do go down on the front. Only 1 left over. But Banelings were left as well, so there's no way for Cure to pounce on a defenseless Zerg. More connections being made. Another tank taken out. More Banelings. Really crucial here, but they are being made and in time. As far as the push to the south goes, I feel like that actually could have been better. And now Cure has no splash against so much Ling Baneling. Wah! He's given up entirely and trying to macro out of this. After the SCVs were killed, did not bother replacing them. He never started up 2-2. And this was Cure being led by the nose, is what it feels like. He got so surprised by the mutas and then didn't have any timings that really worked for him. And then I was like, well, maybe I can just defend. And then, well, no, I kind of have to push. And all that time is when the Zerg player is recovering from a rather, you know, less than economical opener, the kind of fast mutas. It's all that time that they're building up the 4th base and all the drones and getting their upgrades and getting their Baneling speed and getting to a maxed out army, waiting for the Terran to push. And that was not very, that wasn't really a contest, is what it felt like at the end there. We're on Frostline for game 3, however. In the top right it is Cure, in the bottom left it is Dark. Dark's Muta Gambit worked out very well. I mean, some of the best that I've seen mutas work in a while. Because again, they're not meta, despite that little month or something that we had where it seemed like a lot of Zerg players are going mutas. It's not meta. And when we say not meta, we're not just pointing our pinky fingers out and saying, well, this is how StarCraft is meant to be played, and if you don't do it, then you're dumb. You know, it's not meta because it usually isn't good. That is why something falls out of the meta. It isn't good. Mutas kind of fall under that category. But I do like seeing them. I do think they still have some potential. And I do like them as a surprise tactic, which it definitely was last game. But then not only that, it really felt like it just totally threw off Cure's groove. Cure was grooving to some music while building his 4th command center, thinking, haha, this is going to be a macro game. It's going to be a great macro game. I'm going to kill some Ling Baneling Ultra. It's going to be great. And then Muta showed up. And that just, it felt like it really threw Cure off. From his defenses being a little lackluster. At the end of that game, I think he had lost upwards to 40 SCVs from the mutas. His aggression that he had planned also was completely thrown off. I'm sure before those mutas arrived, he probably had a plan for how exactly he was going to move out, when he was going to move out, how he was going to move out, how he was going to siege his tanks, how he was going to anticipate the Zerg attack into his attack, you know. And the mutas really do throw you for a loop, because it's not just the mutas that change up things, it's also the playstyle with the mutas, you know. Very rarely, I would say, do Zerg players try and go mutas, first of all. Second of all, try to go mutas, and then immediately go into ultras. That is an alternative option. If you predict that the Terran player is going to do nothing but sit back against you, you can say, okay, I'm going to take this chance and like dive straight to Hive and ultras. And that can be a bit of the struggle on both sides, honestly, right? The Terran player doesn't quite know at times if they're going to go into ultras or if they're just building non-stop Ling Baneling Muta, ready to attack you wave after wave after wave. And that can cause the indecision on the Terran side as to whether or not they should push or pull. And I think that's exactly what happened last game. Cure was like, I'm going to push. No, hold on. I'm going to wait, and he's going to counterattack me. Okay, counterattack, but it actually kind of did a lot of damage. And then, well, now I got to push, and oh, God, I lost all my SCVs. Okay, well, okay. And then it just felt like he had deflated even before the engagement happened. I am almost positive it won't happen this time around. Dark throwing out the book of builds here. Nidus Worm was a complete failure. The Muta twist, I think, was perfect for the scenario that I had described with roaches, but still like kind of the same idea with Mutas. Something that Kier was not going to scout, particularly with his defensive setup, and then was going to be surprised by. And then we got game 3, where I'm sure Dark is going to throw out something completely different as well. Because I can tell you, Kier is not throwing out anything different. Kier, not the type of Terran player who often says, I am losing, I have to change things up drastically. In this matchup, anyway. I think he does a lot more in the other matchups. But in this matchup, it feels like Kier goes, I'm losing. I think I can improve on some macro front. So back to 3cc, and then I'm going to change up my Hellion usage. You're going to be aggressive instead of defensive. I'm going to maybe not go Banshees, although he is in this game. I'm going to 8 racks instead of 4cc. I'm going to do the 2 tank push instead of playing a little more defensive. You know, like that's what he changes up. Not so much, okay, I'm losing, let's go for a proxy 2 racks. Which I haven't seen one in a while at this point. I thought the win rate was insane. We already have those first 2 Hellions being far more aggressive, I believe, than any previous game, right? The Reaper is always scouted in both games, but this is the first time I think those first 2 Hellions immediately moved out. This can be a little dangerous, just because you can be overwhelmed with Lings with 2 Hellions, if that's something the Zerg built. Dark's not building Lings, he's building drones. He is taking the opportunity to get away with macro right now, although he's, again, going for very fast lair. Yeah. I'd be so surprised if the Mutas work this game, though. Because even though they're a more macro surprise, it's still something that now Kira's like, oh, right, okay, gotcha. Yeah, Mutas are a thing I need to worry about. Okay. It's not Mutas, never mind. Never mind. Yeah, so, I mean, I'm glad to see that. I think the map isn't as good for them, and I think the surprise factor is totally gone. But, yeah, so a couple of faster upgrades for the Zerg player as the drones continue being produced. 4th hatchery is on the way, something scouted by the Hellions. So far, no important damage being done. 3 drones from the Banshees, no big deal. Double engineering bay on the way for Cure. After his barracks, 3rd CC on location. Using the Hellions aggressively again, kind of opens up that 3rd CC to some run-bys, but Dark just never made that many Lings. And most of the Hellions did stay at home anyway. Those first 2 Hellions with the Reaper, really great scouting. And then if you want to continue scouting, at least on the front lines of the Zerg, then it's into the Banshees. Can do a little scouting as well. But at this point, kind of double, triple confirming that it's not going to be a bunch of roaches headed across the map. Would be one of the scarier things to happen at this time. The Banley Nest was actually not seen. So at this point in time, Kier is kind of in the dark. He sees a macro hatchery, and that is it. Doesn't even see the lair, which is in the natural, actually. It is Infestation Pit. It's going to be Fast Hive. I guess he's going to go into that Fast Ultra that he did in the first game, kind of, sort of. And Kier is not going to realize that for a little bit. And you could say, well, he could just scan, couldn't he? Well, Terran players are notoriously greedy, so no. But it would be a good guess that the natural is the one where the technology is. And Kier could scan it, he's just not going to. We actually got extra barracks already on the way, so Kier is going to 3 racks 8. 3cc 8 racks. There we go, those are the numbers. There's the final racks coming down. Dark had been supply blocked. Ugh. Very unfortunate timing. The push is on the way. Starting to bank up a few too many minerals to look comfortable against this push. Upgrades are almost done for both parties. Combat shields a little later. But the tank's going to get into a good position. The armory, not quite done. So if Dark was ready right now, he could jump on top of this without Hellbats to worry about. But it looks like he might not be able to. Hellbats could be a part of this push. Dark once again supply blocks, by the way. This is the worst time to have that happen. Does he have enough to handle this? 1-1 upgrade advantage, no longer here, but the Hellbats did not play a part. The Hellions, not nearly as scary, not nearly as good. I do have Dark clean things up before it got worse, frankly. I'm gonna nip it in the bud. Prior to the Hellbats being involved, prior to the combat shields being involved, and basically prior to the upgrades being involved too. It's kind of a perfect timing, despite back-to-back supply blocks. But on the one hand, Dark handled that better than I thought he could. Kier also, I mean, that's kind of par for the course, I want to say, for a Terran player's push, actually. He could have done better, sure, but it's not about that one push. It's about the next one, and the next one, and whether or not Dark is always prepared for it with enough Banelings in the right position. His Ultras will not be in play for a long time. He's got to wait for the Cavern to finish, then Ultras need their armor. That's going to take a long time. But it's still something that Kier isn't totally aware of. I mean, for all he knows, there's a Hydralist N about to build a bunch of Hydras. I think at this point he'd actually figure it out, to be fair, but that it would be the timer then for him. Hatchery does go down, but Dark has a run by, killing at least a dozen SCVs, I want to say. Medivacs took out the hatchery, now going into the main base. Double Spore Crawler trying to stop this from happening, just so ever slightly out of position. That's very unfortunate. Banelings crashing into the supply depots, but now have entirely exhausted their attack? Just about, so the reinforcements could come in. Cure, maybe a little all over the place, trying to both attack and defend, is not paying attention to the most crucial locations, doesn't pay attention to the drop, and was late to paying attention in the natural, and still has yet to clean up the third. This is a really good moment for Dark, because all of this chaos is happening when he is grabbing all these upgrades. If Cure still had his army on the front lines, knocking down this hatchery and then looking for the next domino to fall, this would be very scary for Dark. Rallying into this choke with a couple of tanks and whatever else would be scary. But now he has bought the time to get to Ultras with chitinous plating, with 2-2, and as well as having a supply lead overall. Kier is the one that needs to recover a little bit, but he is 8-raxing, so economy is not really what he was hoping to look for. This is a lot of Lings with 2-2, gonna finish up against only 2-1 by the looks of it. Lings in the main base, not just killing these SCVs, but then also interrupting all of the production. That's the real kick in the nuts right there. Oh my god. Wow, Kier is falling apart. Doesn't even lift the command center. He's not even going to wait for the actual engagement. Whoa.